So hey guys, welcome to another Warframe video, and today I want to talk about sort of a Sentinel rework that I would personally like to see implemented. These aren't just my ideas. I've been browsing the Warframe forums, I've been reading comments on the recent Barakatir video where he brought the primed regen, and I sort of compiled everything together and I added my own ideas, and I want to know what you guys think about it, and maybe if you have a cool idea, you can share it as well. Now, first things first, I would make Sentinels tankier, but I wouldn't make them tankier by just adding more numbers, because that doesn't solve anything, because once you get to a slightly higher level, they're still gonna get one shot. What I would do though is I would simply give them evasion, chance to nullify the damage, because they're small, they can maneuver around, so why not give them evasion like Titania has in her Razor Wing? This wouldn't make Sentinels quote-unquote immortal in lower levels because they would still take damage, but it would increase their lifespan in higher levels because they would have, let's just say, 50% chance to simply dodge an attack because they're small and fast. It would also be pretty easy to add because they already did it with Titania. Now, while this would be a nice little change, it wouldn't really do much because eventually the Sentinel would die and then it would regenerate and then it would die again. So I would take the regen mod and I would change it into a repair mod. This would be much harder to implement, but I don't think it's impossible. The way this would work is instead of your Sentinel dying, then magically regenerating and dying a couple seconds later, if you have the repair mod equipped and your Sentinel takes lethal damage, it will just break into multiple parts. You then have to go and pick up those parts to reassemble the Sentinel, which will start the repair process, and after, let's just say 30 to 60 seconds, your Sentinel is back up. At first, I was also thinking about a short event that would trigger where you have to defend the Sentinel while it's repairing, but I don't think that would work very well. However, we now have a primed version of the regen mod, so we would have to have a primed version of the repair mod as well. So what I was thinking is simply make the repair time shorter. So the normal repair mod would repair it after 60 seconds once you gather up all the parts, and the primed version would do it in, let's just say, 30. Now, I think it's important to make it so that it takes much longer than a simple revive for a Kubro, a Kavat, or the Hellmanz charger. Because if Sentinels were just as easy to quote-unquote revive as the Kubros, Kavats, and the Hellmanz charger, the incentive to run them would be even lower than it is right now. Because as it says right now, Kubros, Kavats, and the Hellmanz charger are these big chunks of flesh that have link mods, so they can be really tanky, and they're also very easy to revive. So I would definitely make it harder for people to revive their Sentinel. You have to run around, you have to pick up the parts, and then it takes time for the Sentinel to repair itself. The third thing I would change with Sentinels is I would make them float higher. Now, why would I do that? Well, it's pretty simple, because Sentinels are way too vulnerable to random AoE damage, and they usually just get one-shot by stuff they can't avoid. If you go to a level 30 mission and a Bombard, Scourge, Hayaka Master, Moa, Osprey, anything starts firing in your general direction, if it's AoE, it's probably gonna kill your Sentinel. So the obvious solution, at least in my opinion, is to just make Sentinels float a little bit higher. I'm not saying, make them float above the ceiling, just a little bit higher, so not every single Hayaka Master, Bombard, or Scourge just one-shots them by farting in your general direction. And the final change that I would personally make is to just make Vacuum either usable on all companions or bake it into Warframe. Now, you may remember me talking about this very idea in a previous video and not liking it, but with the changes that we have just implemented, I think it would be fine. Because my main argument last time was, well, you can revive Kubros and Kavat, so why would you use a Sentinel? But we've made it so that Sentinels can now be repaired, so that's no longer an issue. So what we are left with is this massive pool of companions that can all use Vacuum if you're willing to sacrifice a mod slot, and they all have different utility. You can run Carrier and get ammo mutation, but you can also run a Kubro that's gonna dig up items for you and open up lockers, or you can run a Hayika that's gonna give you more resources, or you can run Helios if you want to scan things, or the Hellmanz charger if you want a really beefy companion that does slash and toxin damage and stuff like that. And I think it would make the companion selection far more exciting. Now, I would also like to mention 3 ideas that I found on the internet, and I'm personally not a big fan of, but they are definitely interesting. So the first one was to give us an item that we can craft in the foundry and equip in our gear slot. Once we are in a mission and our Sentinel dies, we can use it, and it's kind of like an air support charge, but instead of sending down like a turret or the healing thing, Ortis would send you another Sentinel. And I don't like this one because it's sort of a band-aid, right? It's a quick fix to kind of get rid of the issue with Sentinels, and it doesn't really solve the problem. And you would have to balance it, you would have to give it a cooldown, so you can't craft a bazillion of them, just keep sending yourself new Sentinels. But I thought it was definitely worth mentioning because I thought it was an interesting idea and something they could easily do. And the other two ideas are fairly similar, and that's to simply make Sentinels immortal and turn them into, essentially, passive buffs. The first variation of this idea removes their weapons as well, which I don't think it's a good idea because, well, just removing Sentinel weapons isn't the way to go in my opinion, but it literally just makes them into these immortal things that float around and give you utility. So Carrier would still use his vacuum, Helios would still scan things, Shade would, cloak you could give them vacuum and stuff like that. And the second variation of this idea that's currently floating around the internet is to make them immortal and keep their weapons intact, which would just make them overpowered and give you literally no reason to run a Kubro, Kavat, or the Hellmanz charger, and that's why I don't like it. And that's pretty much it for the video, so I want to know what you guys think about all of these ideas, so please let me know in the comment section below this video. I thank you very much for watching, as always, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.